Hi, I've just been sorting out my counterbores for a job I need to do for a friend of mine, and I just got the boxes out and I haven't realised how many I've made over the years. I made all these on my homemade tool and cutter grinder, and they're all for special jobs. You can get counterbores easy enough, but to get a specific kind for a specific job, well, you've got to make your own, and lots of people make them out of drill rod or silver steel and make their own pilots. But over the years I've accumulated some old drills which I've obtained from flea markets and various other places. Most of them damaged. I get the damaged one, they're very, very cheap, and I modify these and make counterbores out of them when I need them. And I just thought it might be of interest for me to show you some of my counterbores, pilot drills and some flat bottom drills I've made, and also some special sheet metal drills which I made, and they're the way I've ground the sheet metal ones. You can actually drill holes in 5,000 shim. Now these counterbores, they're all, as I say, they're all made from scrap drills, and there's various kinds, and some of them have been relieved. And whether this can be seen on the whether it will focus, I don't know. But this is the pilot. This is an old taper shank drill which was damaged, but it does work. But this was ground down for a special job, and it's also been relieved. The actual relief behind the land has been relieved there to stop rubbing. And here I have an old core drill which has been modified. Here again the pilot has been ground down, and each tooth has been backed off to the clearance angle. Whether that will focus, I don't think it will. I will show some close-ups of these. And here we have another modified one which has been ground down on the end to form a guide for the counterbore. Here we have another example. This is made from an old end mill, which was I believe it was a Clare type fitting with the small flats, but this was made for a special job, and it does have an angle. I also have some larger ones which were used to produce an angle in a fairly deep hole. And this, if I remember rightly, is ground at 60 degrees. It's as you can see, now the clearance on this is done in a special way which I devised many years ago when I was employed in the tool making industry, and it's a kind of a radial relief. I hope to make a video about producing these kinds of reliefs, but that's for the future. And this is another example of a small counterbore made from a scrap drill. Now this has been spun on the OD, it's been ground on the OD. I ground that down slightly from the original diameter, and this was again for a special job and a special diameter. Now after grinding down the OD there, it thickened up the land too much, and if I'd have used it as that, it would have rubbed. So what I have done, I've relieved it behind, and this is a technique which I've used many times before when I was employed in the tool making, and it forms a radial relief on the rear of the land on the drill. It's a very special technique, and I've never ever seen any reference to it on the internet or in any tool and cutter grinding book. I think it's perhaps unique, and the company I work for, they used to use this quite a lot, and it's a very interesting way of relieving the the thickness of the land on drills. If you've actually, you know, if you modify them by grinding. Again, I'd love to show this method. It's a very complicated setup, but once it's set up, it's quite straightforward, and it's very interesting. And as I say, I've never ever found any reference anywhere. Now, this is an example of a taper shank counterbore. Well, basically it's a step drill, really, a pilot drill I should say, and this is a technique which I've used on this front diameter. I've relieved it, done a radial relief for the method I've just described, and when you look closely, it actually follows a curve of the flute of the OD. Now, I do have a better example somewhere and I can't just find it. Now this is actually a sheet metal drill which I modified for a special job, and this one has the method of radial relief behind the land, and as you can see, or maybe not see, the way it's ground, and it's actually radial all the way round the back. You cannot back these off like you can an ordinary end mill or slot drill, and this method uses an angled wheel. The wheel is dressed in such a way that when you run it up through the tooth rest on the cutter grinder, it produces a radial land, and to look at that, you would actually think it's being ground like that with a form wheel, or even milled like it's been milled. And whether that will show up, I don't know, but I must get a closer view of that. This is another special drill I made. It's a small step drill, and there we can see a tiny step there. It drills, produces the diameter there, and produces the flat bottom. There again, a scrap drill. Also, I have also actually made very fine pilots with an angle on the edge there. And here we have an example of even smaller counterbore. And there we are, small counterbore there, very small. I believe I relieved this one. No, that's just a basic pilot drill, basic counterbore I should say. And same with that one as well. And here's another example of one which I've relieved on the flutes, as I mentioned, and it's also relieved on the pilot there. This is the pilot drill. So this drill this diameter and the larger one at the same time. That was for a one-off job, and it was for a deep hole that required a flat bottom. And here we have another taper shank drill with the same type of relief on this pilot drill, and a flat bottom again. As you can see, I've got quite a few now. I've also modified drills for flat bottom, just pure flat bottom drills. After a bore has been bored out or drilled, and then these can be put down and just put the flat bottom at the bottom of the hole. basically very simple, almost like an end mill really. But of course there's no cutting on the OD. These just acts as a guide and produces a flat bottom. I do notch the end of the drill. It gives that little bit of clearance. Now this one is again a flat bottom drill, but does have a small angle ground for again a special job. And here we have a large one with a tiny angle ground on the OD, a turn down shank to fit in the drill chuck. Again, quite a variety. I never realised they had so many, but they're all very useful. They all get used, even though they are specials. And the next category I have, these are my sheet metal drills. Now, I've used these quite a lot. I know you can get proper sheet metal cutters. In fact, I believe I do have some. These kinds, you've probably seen these, and they're very, very good for drilling sheet metal. They're absolutely perfect. But if you want to drill any really thin material, these are no good, and an ordinary drill's no good. So you do need to use this kind of drill. Now this kind of sheet metal drill what I make, I grind these by hand. I don't grind these on my tool and cutter grinder. And what I do is I grind these by hand, but I make sure that the tiny pip at the front, the tiny, well, what you can call it a drill point really, it's just ever so slightly in front of the OD, very, very slightly, and that acts as a guide. And with the way I grind these, you can actually drill, as I said, 5 thou shim, and I will demonstrate that on some 5 thou brass shim, and you can produce a clean hole without it snatching. It's tricky, but you can grind these by hand. I have quite a variety, even to this size. But I always make sure that the pip, the small drill point, is just ever so slightly in front of the cutting edge of the OD. Various sizes. Some very small ones, which are quite good. And here's the one I showed before, where it's relieved, radially relieved on the OD. They're quite easy to make. You can make your own out of drill rod or silver steel, as we call it here in the UK. But if you do have a small tool and cutter grinder, you're probably better off just old scrap drills and make them out of them. Now this is a close-up of one of the modified drills, one of the pilot Counterbores. It's a bit crude, is this one. It's not a very good finish on it. It's not one of the best. And this is one with the radial angular relief, which I use. I hope to make a video showing how I put this relief on. It's a lot easier than trying to do it by hand. It's very effective. I've used this method many times over the years. The actual pilot itself has a drill point, but it didn't use for drilling. And this is the modified core drill. Produces some very accurate holes, does this particular drill.
And this is the sheet metal drill with the radial relief on the OD, which I described earlier. I hope to make a video showing how I produce this.
I use my cylindrical grinding attachment, again homemade, on my cutter grinder. This is the thing I use, and all this is an 18-volt motor. It's an 18-volt motor driven from batteries and using a rheostat, and I can control the speed nicely. And I just put the cutter, the drill or whatever I'm grinding it into bushes. I have different kinds of different size bushes, and I'm able to get. Whoops. This isn't the correct bush, by the way, for this particular one, but I'm able to grind more or less any kind of drill I want, and it's quite effective, and it works very well. It's a bit crude. It really needs to be modified and I think strengthened a little bit, which I do plan to do. And this is my homemade tool and cutter grinder, which I've described on previous videos, and it's quite effective. And the small grinding head can be angled to any angle I need. I don't use special wheels, they're just aluminium oxide, white aluminium oxide wheels, and they serve quite well. Of course, you should never mount wheels on any kind of grinder, homemade or commercial or whatever, without testing to make sure they're sound, and always use blotter washers, paper washers or cardboard on the flanges. Before you mount any grinding wheel on any machine, it doesn't matter what kind, you should always make sure you've got your paper washers for the flanges. And also you really need to check the wheel to make sure that there's no flaws, make sure that they're not cracked, because they're very dangerous things, the grinding wheels. You can have a nasty experience, and years ago I nearly come a cropper by being careless mounting a grinding wheel, which I'll mention in a moment. Now if you put a grinding wheel on, if you check a grinding wheel and it's got a crack or it's not it's damaging anyway, if you tap it with a piece of metal, it'll sound dull. It'll sound like that, something similar to that. This is a sound wheel because I'm just gripping it to give an example. But if you hang it free then and then tap it, it'll ring. It's got that nice ring. And that's a good sign. That shows you that wheel is sound. It's okay, and that's safe to mount. But if it's dull, no sound, you just throw it away, because you could have a nasty accident. And always use a guard with a wheel. Now, many years ago, when I was employed in the tool making, one morning I mounted a wheel on a Cincinnati monoset precision tool and cutter grinder to do a special job. It was if I remember rightly, it was a green grit wheel, and I just mounted it, put the paper flanges on and everything, did everything correct, but I didn't put the guard on. Stupid. I don't know why. I don't know what possessed me to do that. All I had was a lamp shade, which I put over the top of the wheel so I could clearly see what I was doing. And I set the wheel going, and it was going at a fair lick on they really do go fast on these cutter grinders. And I was doing some manipulation with this tool, and all of a sudden the wheel burst, went with a tremendous bang, and there were bits flying all over. And another stupid thing I did, I never had any safety glasses on. Why, I don't know. Normally it's the first thing I put on is safety glasses. Luckily none of the bits hit me. And when the wheel stopped, I had a look at the state of the wheel. Nothing left, it'd gone. And I looked at the lampshade, and there was a great big lump out of the lampshade, a big dent in the lampshade, the shape of a piece of wheel, the form. It actually formed in the lampshade just on the site of where my forehead was, where the lampshade was. And it's a good job that lampshade was there, otherwise I probably wouldn't have been here now talking. And after that I made sure I never ever forgot to put a guard on and glasses, and let the wheel, and you also, it pays to let the wheel spin a moment or two. Just stand to one side and let it spin, just to make sure. It's always worth remembering to do that, because as I say, wheels can, but even a sound wheel can burst. It might ring and it might be perfect, but it's been known for wheels to burst, and they've been okay. So just be warned. I never made that mistake again, never. And this is just a few close-ups, give you an idea what I was talking about the radial relief, and you can just see it there. And here's the drill, which is ground with an angle on, which I showed earlier. This is just a pilot drill. The actual small diameter does no drilling, although there is a drill point there. It's just a pilot drill. Is this? Just a pilot counterbore, I should say. And here we have the core drill, a 6-foot core drill, which I modified for a special job. And there you can see the backing off, the clearance.
Right here I'm just demonstrating drilling some 4th hour brass shim with one of these drills which I mentioned earlier, one of these sheet metal drills, and as you can see, it drills it quite easily. The thing to remember is when drilling thin shim, if anybody would ever drill thin shim, but the small point, the small guide at the front of the drill really wants to be made with no sharp edges. It wants to be like a small cone, really, ground like a small cone without any sharp edges. If it has sharp edges like a small drill, it will tend to grab the shim and destroy it. So that's just worth remembering. But for general sheet metal, your standard sheet metal stuff, well, you really need the tiny pit really needs to be left sharp so it does penetrate the steel sheet. The shim what I've just drilled, I thought it was 5 thou, it's actually 4 thou, and you can see on the mics as if the camera focuses properly, but it is 4 thou. Now these are some of the steel wheels. If you do ever go at making one of these kind of drills, make sure that the one for sheet steel has a small nick at the point, and this helps to penetrate the steel. Now, if you're going to use one for drilling shim, which I don't think anybody would use, but if you do, make sure that the point is actually rounded. It's ground as a cone. There's no cutting edge. If you leave it nicked like the other one, it will tend to grab and ruin the hole.
Here I'm using the modified pilot drill to open out the 1/4 inch holes in the wheels.
Well, it's a definitely easier way of drilling large holes than just drilling with an ordinary drill. You get less vibration and a cleaner hole. Well, it's certainly made these wheels a lot lighter, and I think they look better with these holes drilled. Well, I hope you found it of interest, and thanks for watching.